Hello there guys, what is going on? Daniel Childs back here again for my team selector ahead of tomorrow's game against West Ham. It's the 12:30 kickoff. It's a big game for Chelsea, it really is. Chelsea need to start racking up wins, and I think this is the start of a really important period in the season for Chelsea and what could potentially be a really productive period in the season, because I not only look at tomorrow's game, I also look at the upcoming games in the Premier League, the type of teams Chelsea are going to be facing home and away. West Ham, relegation trouble. Southampton next weekend have been in relegation trouble. I think beyond the Spurs away game, we've got the likes of Leeds and Everton in the next month. It's a chance for Chelsea to do what they haven't been doing this season and rack up consistent wins, which we need to do. There needs to be signs of progression. There needs to be signs of good results that you can lean on, look back on and say, okay, that is where Chelsea could be going in the future. And it's not only about Graham Potter getting support in the transfer market. We need to start seeing improvement on the pitch. We need to start seeing a majority of Chelsea players playing well under his coaching. And hopefully that can start tomorrow. If you are new around here, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Make sure to hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of the uploads on the channel. Hit the like button too, because it really helps out. If you are listening on the podcast feed, thank you so much for tuning in. Son of Chelsea is a part of the 90 Min podcast network. But let's start off looking at West Ham, 17th in the Premier League, only 1 point above the relegation zone, not the place that David Moyes and I'm sure many West Ham fans felt they would be at this point in the season, given where they have been in recent years, European adventures, and even at one point, chasing down a Champions League qualification space. And the amount that was invested in the summer, it's a little bit of a surprise that David Moyes is still in his job. I think he's done incredibly well at West Ham, and I think probably that has, vindicated some trust and patience for him, because he has helped transform that club in recent seasons. But given that teams in and around West Ham in the relegation battle have been changing their head coaches, I mean, Southampton could change their head coach again. Sean Dyche going in at Everton and improving things. Leeds sacking Jesse Marsch. I do wonder how many more weeks of bad results, if that continues for West Ham, Moyes will be in a job. But, they have won 3 of their last 5 games. But for context, 2 of those wins did come in the FA Cup, and the one league win did come against Frank Lampard, against Everton. That was Lampard's final game in charge. So just for context there, that was a massive game in terms of against a relegation, struggling, rival, but it hasn't been great for West Ham. But they did pick up a decent result and get a good performance away at Newcastle last weekend, and I expect that they will stick with this 3-4-2-1 formation. Very compact, as we know of West Ham, even at home. It's playing on the counter. It's using Mikel Antonio as kind of a focal point to play off when you've got Jared Bowen and Ben Rama, the speed around the corner from them. And of course, Declan Rice and Lucas Paqueta, who did score last weekend, hopefully forming for them a solid partnership at the base of midfield. But for Chelsea, it's a game we should be winning. It's a game we should be hopefully further jeopardising the status of West Ham in the Premier League. That hopefully is the case. Let's look at Graham Potter's press conference. Team news-wise, Raheem Sterling is a doubt after picking up a knock in training. Denis Zakaria, Mateo Kovacic and Wesley Fofana are stepping up their recovery in training, but not available for this game. But one player that is definitely available for this game and back from suspension is JOAO FELIX. He kind of feels like the big player that's being talked about ahead of this fixture. I'm seeing a lot of articles about him. Adam Newson on Football.London wrote a piece about him. And, it's a big game for him, back from suspension, given what was seen from him in that Fulham game, apart from two-footing someone. I think there was a lot to be excited about, and given the players that Chelsea have brought in since then in an attacking point of view, and Enzo Fernandez in central midfield, there is real hope when you put these players on paper that Chelsea could have a very exciting team and a great team to watch. I do want to warn people that has been the cast in recent years. Cast your mind back to the summer of 2020 when we were putting out our lists of, and I was as well, looking at Timo Werner, Hakim Ziyech, Kai Havertz, all these players, coming together to form a really great attack. We have been here before with Chelsea. It's now on Graham Potter and the players to find a system that is going to make Chelsea a lot more productive. But I think Felix can absolutely offer something to Chelsea that's a little bit different. And I hope for Felix's sake, and I hope for the club's sake, because it is a very expensive loan, he can become a permanent Chelsea player. And if he does in the summer, because there have been reports that Chelsea feel confident if it does get to that stage, Chelsea could make a permanent deal. That would mean that JOAO FELIX, for me, has been a success at Chelsea, which hopefully can be the case. And I think that going into this game, it's not only JOAO FELIX and what he could do, but it's also all the other new players that could be starting this game. So let's get into my predicted 11. And it's probably not a surprise if you're looking at it on my YouTube channel that a majority of those new names do start this game. We'll get into the reasoning when we get further up the pitch. But 4-2-3-1, that has kind of been the the main formation that Graham Potter has been using, 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1 since we returned from the World Cup. Funny, talking about JOAO Felix, that was the one game, obvious game since the World Cup where he has gone back to, say, a 3-4-3. But I do think that tomorrow he's going to stick with the base of a back four and start to build that back four a little bit more. So Kepa in goal. Ben Chilwell, I think, should be starting ahead of Motka Correa, getting Ben Chilwell back to match fitness. Badiashile is not involved in the Champions League squad, so it's a no-brainer he starts this game. But on top of that, Badiashile has been one of Chelsea's best performers in recent weeks, alongside Thiago Silva, forming the base of a strong back two that is keeping Chelsea and preventing Chelsea from conceding goals at the moment, which is obviously a real positive. Reece James hopefully can play a little bit more than, say, the 50 minutes. I know eyes will, I think, inevitably turn to that Borussia Dortmund game in midweek. But, it's a short turnaround for Reece and for Chelsea. But hopefully he can play 60, 70 minutes maybe tomorrow and then maybe make the change ahead of midweek. Moving into central midfield, Enzo Fernandez, obviously. Carney Chukwuemeka. The reason I want to play Carney here in a deeper role, because he has kind of been used mostly this season as kind of an inside forward, even a winger at times. I just think that what Carney Chukwuemeka in kind of maybe what is more of a natural role for him as a player, adding more mobility. Chelsea really lacked someone last week, like a Mateo Kovacic, who could just at times break in those central areas to kind of disrupt the structure of Fulham. It was also static, Chelsea players almost standing in position, and there was a lack of movement, and that really made at times things easy for Fulham to defend against. Chelsea are going to be up against that problem tomorrow, and how are we going to make sure it isn't the same case? Because it's not just looking at that front four or front three of players, it's also behind them. You've got Enzo Fernandez, who hopefully can thread some really good balls from central midfield that can kind of cut a defence. But you also need, I think, someone in central midfield for me who can be Conor Gallagher as well. At times can be Mason Mount, who's going to run beyond the ball. And I think Carney Chukwuemeka maybe can offer that for Chelsea tomorrow. Then we get into the front four. JOAO Felix is kind of the number 10. It feels like the obvious role for him in this system for Chelsea at the moment. Just behind a striker. Mykhailo Mudryk on the left. Noni Madueke on the right. And David Datcher Fofana as the centre forward. So, do I think this is going to happen? I mean, with Raheem Sterling potentially being out, I think this increases the chances of this happening, because Raheem Sterling, I said this last week, as kind of a senior player, as a player that Potter was relying on a lot since he took the job, and of course was a big signing we made last summer. But I do think it says a lot. I think it's not only about who I think is going to operate best for Chelsea at the moment and who I think can offer a bit of inspiration and kind of a bravery, because I look at players like Mason Mount and Kai Havertz in particular, who neither of them for me should be starting tomorrow, and I don't think their recent performances have justified more starts, in my opinion. I just don't think it makes sense to be starting them. But they reflect two players who just look so short of confidence at the moment. And when I look at David Datcher Fofana as a player who came on last week, in a big occasion, Chelsea needed to find a goal. And just making runs and being a little bit more daring. And we saw it with Noni Madueke too. We've seen it with Mykhailo Mudryk. Chelsea's attack this season, and Chelsea just as a club and the mood around the club, has just lacked that bravery and just that raw energy at times, a bit of a maverick. I speak about this a lot in an attacking sense, but just players who are going to be a bit more fearless and aren't kind of dragged down by what's been going on for most of this season. And I feel like those players could offer that and, be less predictable, which is what Chelsea have to start being if they're going to be a productive attack, if Graham Potter is going to turn things around at Stamford Bridge this season. And I just think it would say a lot to kind of, it send a real statement to those players who have maybe been comfortable in their starting positions for so long, that there's a new Chelsea here. You've got competition and you have to fight to reclaim your place now. And I think starting all of those players would do that. I also want to mention, in the case of Badiashile not being in the Champions League squad, David Datcher Fofana and Noni Madueke are also not involved in the Champions League squad. So again, you've kind of got that extra reason to be starting them and featuring them in this game, because they won't be featuring against Borussia Dortmund if you want to save some players like Hakim Ziyech and Kai Havertz potentially for midweek. So that is my 11. I'm sure a lot of you guys will be excited to see the likes of JOAO Felix and see Mudryk again and see Madueke. And for me, I think, Fofana, I know that he's still a very young striker, and Chelsea would be starting some very young players. You look through this starting 11, there's some very young players in this team. And there is a risk that comes with that in what is going to be a hostile environment. Even with West Ham struggles, Chelsea, better Chelsea teams in recent years have gone there and lost. So it's not going to be a simple fixture. But I just think what Chelsea need currently, what I've been watching in recent weeks, what has been greatly lacking, some of the players who've been underperforming and for me do not deserve to be starting this game. That is why I've gone with that starting 11. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments below. Follow me on Twitter at SonOfChelsea, and I will see you again very soon. All the best.